When coming into turn 1, you want to go wide on entry, but do not go on the outside curb. It can make the car very unstable. It's also important to note that the braking point is quite late. For reference, it's about the 35 meter mark, which is about 15 meters after the 50 board on the left side of the track. Make sure to turn in as soon as the brakes are being applied. But keep in mind, the corner is quite wide, so that means you want to carry as much speed in the corner as possible. When entered at the proper speed, the car will feel like it's understeering, but at some point, it will get to the apex of the corner. While at the middle of the corner, you want to avoid hitting the inside curb as well as being patient on the throttle. When you have passed the midway point of the corner, you want to max out the throttle as soon as you can. But if you're too early on the throttle, you'll end up in the grass. Turn 1 and Turn 2 are quite close to each other. This means the steering should feel like Turn 1's exit continues into Turn 2's entry. Make sure to get the car as far right as possible before turning into the corner. However, the curb on the right side of the track should be avoided at all costs. When it comes to braking in this corner, it's quite minimal and just dabbing it will do you well here. Your target for where to put the car on exit should be about in the middle of the track. Turn 3 is hard to get right if you're not entering into it from the right spot. So when I say get to the middle of the track out of Turn 2, I meant it. Now from the middle of the track, you want to start turning into Turn 3 quite early, but be sure you're still on throttle while turning in. Letting off throttle should occur just before the apex, and you want to continue to stay off throttle until after the apex of the corner. When you come past the apex of the corner, you want to apply max throttle. If all this is done in the correct manner, you will not need to lift off the throttle throughout the entire exit of this corner. When coming into Turn 4, you should be going quite fast, but you should still be in second gear. There is no reason to shift gears in this section or even before this section. What's important to this corner is the track usage. Make sure you are as far right on the track as possible. That does include using the curb. This corner is really fast and is quite wide, so it's really about maintaining speed throughout the corner. To get the best average speed through this corner, you want to turn in very soon and keep as much speed as possible. A slight trail brake coming into the corner is a great way to maintain speed. To do this though, you have to turn in quite early and use some other driving strategies I stated before. Trail braking and throttle managing. Turn 5 is really just a continuation of Turn 4. The goal of this corner is again maintaining speed, but even more so. No braking should occur in this corner, just some lifting off throttle. Keep in mind you have to turn in early, probably much earlier than you might think. Just like Turn 4, you can use the inside curb to your advantage. On the exit of this corner, you should be fully engaging the throttle, though it's likely you will apply quite a lot of throttle even before the exit of this corner. Going all the way onto the exit curb on the left side of the track is not only faster, it's also much easier. Though you must not forget that this corner is quite fast, so it's easy to make a mistake here. But don't let that scare you. It's an important section of the track, and nailing it is key to going fast at this track. When you're entering into Turn 6, be sure that the car is in third gear. This isn't all that important, but you don't want to be shifting right at the apex of the corner. This could lose you time in this section, so it's best practicing shifting up before this corner. Now if you've driven this track before, you might have noticed this part of the track is quite fast, but it might be faster than you think. This section is completely flat out. That means there is no lifting off the throttle. The only time you should think about lifting off throttle is if you feel like you're definitely going off track. But do keep in mind though, lifting off throttle is a sign that your steering inputs need some work or fine-tuning in other words. To avoid lifting, it's best to practice to be as gentle as you can on your steering inputs. Now back to talking about Turn 6. It's a great idea to turn in as early as you can, though the AstroTurf should probably be avoided. This is due to it making the car unstable. But by all means, destroy the inside curb, it won't hurt you. Moving on to the exit of the corner, you want to end up slightly to the left of the track. But keep in mind, you should continue steering until the car ends up about in the middle of the track. Turn 7 is so close to Turn 6 that you'll probably have to change your steering direction quite quickly. On entry of the corner, you are going to again want to be gentle on steering, but this time make sure to avoid hitting the inside curb of the corner. This is because it'll destabilize the car. You could probably hit it and be okay, but I would advise avoiding the curb. So get close, but don't touch it. On the exit of Turn 7, you should be ending up on or very near the exit curb. It's okay to use the exit curb, but if you can keep the car fully on the tarmac, it will save you a little bit of speed, or in other words, your momentum. And just like the last corner, the AstroTurf can cause some trouble. If you go over it, you should be careful. It's okay to go out this far, but keep in mind you are losing momentum going out this wide, and sometimes it can destabilize the car. Turn 8 and 9 are quite easy when compared to the rest of the track. However, you should still make gentle and smooth steering inputs just like turns 6 and 7. And also, just like turn 7, avoid the inside curb, but this time it's crucial. If you do hit the inside curb, it's quite likely that you will spin the car. So yeah, avoid the inside curbs. Now the exit curbs on the other hand are fine to use, but it's best to not use them. It can cause some issues if you turn a little aggressively whilst driving on the curb. Though this is more applicable to turn 8's exit curb rather than turn 9's exit curb. Alright, so when I was editing this video, I was making sure that all the things I was saying was true, and this one happens to be kind of semi-true. So the inside curb, when it's collided with, the rear left tire starts to give out, and actually the exit curb is what spins you. It will just snap on you. And I'll show you that in full speed here. So to simplify, the exit curbs of turn 8 and 9 are okay, but don't really gain time. In addition to this, driving over the curbs can be a risky driving line. Since they don't gain time and just add risk, I'd say avoid the exit curbs. When coming into turn 10, you want to make sure to avoid the entry curb. And since there's no braking boards for this turn, I like to use the outside curb as a point of reference. The way I do this is by guessing when I've passed about half of the curb. To be frank with you, this is quite a difficult thing to do, and will probably take a while for you to get an exact braking point. So it's probably not the best solution for this, and if you have a better way of seeing your braking point, I would highly recommend using it. Now after you've slammed the brakes, you want to make sure to get the car all the way over to the inside curb, but make sure you don't shift into first gear. Keep the car in second gear through the whole corner. This is to help on entry to turn 11. To make it to the inside curb of this corner, you are going to have to make an early apex. That means you have to turn in pretty early. When it comes to the throttle application of this corner, it's all about getting the exit. So make sure you are patient on throttle and use coasting for this corner. After you have made your apex, make sure to go fully on throttle. If you have timed it right, you will not have to lift off the throttle for the next corner. This is what I meant by, it's all about the exit. Turn 11 is directly affected by how well you did in turn 10. So if you're having difficulty with turn 11, make sure you're not going wide on the exit of turn 10. This is what makes this corner so difficult. To have a good entry, you want to have a very minimal transition time. In other words, the steering should switch from right to left very quickly. Oh, and one crazy thing is, this corner should be flat out. No lifting. But in all honesty, this is quite a task, and can only occur if you nail everything. But keep in mind, every time you enter into this corner, your goal is to be able to do it with full throttle. When apexing in this corner, you want to make it quite close to the inside curb. I wouldn't recommend using it, because you can use the exit curb, and quite a lot at that. But this does require you to be quite attentive to where you're going to end up on the exit. As an example, if you enter the corner narrow, you will exit very wide, and a lift-off throttle is required. So make sure you know where the car is going to go on the exit of the corner. It's crucial if you want to stay on track. All in all, the way you know you did this section very well is if your turn 11 is completely flat out. No lifting of any sort. The first thing you should do before coming into turn 12 is making sure not to shift up before this corner. The straight is not too long and the second gear is just long enough for this straight. So make sure on the straight you do not shift into third gear. However, you still have to shift down into first gear for turn 12. Now that all that's been said, let's talk about the entry. Just like a lot of corners before it, avoid the outside curb because it can make the car unstable. I'm starting to sound like a broken record, huh? Yeah. Moving on. Picking when to turn is actually not all that important. That's because the corner is very long and wide. But I usually like to apex slightly early and use the exit of the corner to make up for it. But again, it's not a big deal. This corner has a lot of freedom to it and you can do quite a lot of different lines in it. This is just due to the nature of the corner. But to keep this simple, this corner is a lot of avoiding curbs, making sure to coast, and last but not least, making the exit as smooth as you can. That's why I like to turn in early and make up for it in the exit. It just makes it a little easier to lay down the power. If you do apex early, make sure to apply full throttle right after you've made your apex. This will slingshot you right out of the corner. Whilst this is true, you still need to be wary on where the car is going to end up on the exit of the corner. And keep in mind, the exit curb for this corner is actually quite late, so it's not easy to use it in this car. But if you do find yourself on the curb, just be careful whilst driving on it. This is where it gets really easy in this car. It's easily flat out, you don't even need to use all the track to do it. My best suggestion for this chicane is to be gentle and very deliberate on your steering inputs. Now you can use the curves, but it does increase your chances of rotating the car. However, the chances of curb usage making you rotate the car are quite low. But still, I don't use them, and that's really just because you don't really need to use them. Alright, so when I script these videos, I script them ahead of time, like before I'm actually editing the video, and I can just say that I definitely use the curbs, but not like a substantial amount, so just take that in consideration, avoid them as best you can. If you need to use them, it doesn't really matter. Aw, finally, you made it to the last corner, but this one is really hard to nail. It's hard because the corner is quite long, and of course it's also quite wide. You're gonna really like this next part. The curbs can make the car unstable, so should be avoided for the best chance of survival. This is true for the entry curb as well as the inside curb. I'm getting tired of talking about curbs. Finally though, the corner is really fast, so you want to hold a lot of speed on entry. The car will understeer, so use coasting to make it to the apex of the corner. But you also need to make sure you go for an early apex and get on the throttle quite early. At first glance, it may look impossible to accelerate very early, but trust me, you can accelerate much earlier than it looks. I'd say what's important to this corner is to hold the most speed you can whilst not going wide, and make sure to hit the throttle as soon as possible. If you feel like your exit trajectory is off track, make sure to lift off throttle sooner rather than later. Just keep in mind the exit curb is quite usable, so run it as much as possible. One last thing. You should not be going very deep on entry of the corner. If you are not able to make it to the inside curb, try slowing down a little bit more for this corner. Okay, I lied. One more thing. Make sure not to go into first gear for this corner. Keep it in second gear. So if the video made no sense, or it made some sense but it was a little bit off, make sure you're using my tune. Search up my name and it'll be the third one. It's called Mugello Full. Well, if you made it this far into the video, congrats. This video took me absolutely forever to make, and the next track guides are definitely not going to be in this format. Yeah, that's because it took forever. Now, if you want to see the full lap or the real lap, you can click the top video, and if you want to see whatever YouTube thinks you want to see, click the second video or on the bottom. And as always, guys, thanks for watching.